going to start recording and see how it goes today because unfortunately, sometimes we have some technical glitches as we're exploring new technology, and today is no different as we continue exploring with LinkedIn Live and trying to find some new and interesting opportunities for us to engage with the marketplace and find new and interesting ways for us to start talking directly with the audience. So feels like this is a great opportunity for us here. And there we go. Now we're live on LinkedIn. So very
All right.
excited here to be here with my friend Mr. Mike Walsh to talk about artificial intelligence and what that ultimately is looking like in the debt collection space. So how you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, sir. I am very good.
Well,
How
I
you doing
appreciate.
now that it's working?
I'm doing a lot better. You know, my heart rate is a
Okay,
lot
good.
lower now that the LinkedIn Live is functioning correctly. So that's always a nice part of the puzzle. But
Yeah,
hey,
it helps.
sometimes tech doesn't work, and I feel like that's going to play into our discussion just a little bit here today, as we talk about some of the technology that is being used across the debt collection space and what that ultimately is going to mean. So, let's talk a little bit here about, where your background from an AI perspective comes from, because I could tell the audience that from all the discussions that I've been having with you, there's just so many interesting things that you've kind of taught me about the application of artificial intelligence and understanding models. So, like, talk to us a little bit about your background so we can set the stage for today's discussion.
Okay, so yeah, started in the collection agency world in 1996, right out of college. Did it for years and years and years, and then saw the process, right? Like smartphones changed it, 2008 crash changed things, and I said I want to get into the tech part. My first tech, job in the space was Vel Apps, and learned a lot there just about convenience of like what customers want, like outbound calling versus just dropping a voicemail.
Hmm.
Then I jumped over to True Accord, worked there for 2 years, and that's where I learned a ton about machine learning, AI, what technically is, what technically isn't. Um, Jumped over to Everchain. Then the first day at Everchain met Dan Yakomenko, the creator of EXL's collection product. I didn't know who they were, didn't know how big they were, didn't know they were working already in the space globally. So they have a really good training. And like, I always joke I'm the least technical person at an AI company in the world. Uh, but
Sometimes
I've
that's
learned a
good.
lot.
Someone's got to understand the business,
Yeah,
right?
right. Like I'm like, what do you mean, right? And I asked those dumb questions, and I think I've learned how to translate, technical speak into this space, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's important. But there's a lot of resources out there. LinkedIn Learnings. There's some great AI tools if you're just starting the process and building your plan. I would go there and take some of those courses. A little bit of a advertisement for a certain product, but well worth the free teaching. And just what you learn is there are a lot of definitions of AI.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of use cases for it, and then a lot of people's definitions aren't the same. So
True
that's
statement.
one thing. Yeah.
True
Right. Like
statement.
a lot of people are calling machine learning AI. Is it AI? Some
I
could
mean, you
be
could call
right.
linear regression analysis AI if you really wanted to. It doesn't make it true.
Right. And like technically AI has been around for a long time. It's just how we are using AI that's changed
Hmm.
thanks to Chat GPT and language models. So I think there's huge opportunity in the space. I think creditors are ahead right now. They're jumping in first, but that doesn't mean there aren't agencies jumping in. And shoot, some agencies been doing it for a while. So if you're worried, that's all. Is it safe? Is it compliant? Yeah, it is. It's been compliant for years. So there's plenty of True Accord versus Green. If you need to read that one. Those that was before I even got to True Accord years ago, and so it is time. If you're thinking about it, I think this is a well timed talk, Adam, and I'm excited.
I agree with what you're saying. From we're going to talk a little bit about what I learned from the TransUnion report today and some of the questions that we asked specifically around technology and artificial intelligence. But for me, there was three things that I really drew from drafting that research paper. And the first one is that everybody's having trouble hiring. 88% are having trouble hiring. 81% are having trouble retaining the people that they are actually able to hire, which means that with the increase in the volume of accounts and the decrease in the liquidations that are happening right now, it puts us in a position where we basically need to start preparing for being able to hire those people in some way, shape, or form, or we're going to have to use BPO services to extend our geographic footprint so that we can hire in different geographic locations, whether that be out of the country or just other areas of the United States. And we have to start looking at self-service technology. And a lot of people have heard me say over the last couple of years, I truly believe that the debt collection business will be an e-commerce focused business in the next 10 years. Could be shorter than that. I don't think it'll be
I think it
longer
is.
than that. And people
Yeah.
think I'm a little crazy when I say that, but I would equate even the voice technology, text messages, and emails that we're sending out, really all of the strategies that we're using as a debt collection industry right now, with the exception of phone calls, are to drive people to a portal, which is similar to running advertising and driving people to an e-commerce website.
Right.
And what do the
Yeah.
funnels look like for those users?
Right. Right. It's direct marketing. If you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, right? So I 100% agree, and I think it already is. Like
Mm-hmm.
because of the expectations in other markets, right? Like why do people? I was going to say the DMV. Why do people flip out? Because it's a
Waste of time.
1950s way of doing business, right? Like, and we're used to Amazon, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so. How can this still be happening? Is like I have a license, I need a real ID. Why can't I just do this on a computer? But
Agreed, but I think you bring us to some really good points here because what I wanted to talk about here was to support some of the statements that I just made. It was 90% of companies are expecting at least a 10% increase in their accounts in the next 12 months. So everybody sees that happening. I was actually running a
yeah,
linear regression analysis on the charge-off volumes the other day for a research paper that I was writing, and what I saw shocked me. And I'm going to have to publish this at some point, with the charts and graphs that are associated with it. But basically, if you run a linear regression analysis on the charge-off volume from 2021 through 2024, it shows you the likelihood of, even with a 20% margin of error, that we're going to exceed the Great Depression charge-off volumes in the next 2 to maybe 3 years, like max. And that's with a 20% margin of error on that. So the volume of accounts being increased, there's more accounts that are being originated than ever before. And TransUnion reported in their Q4 2024 Consumer Pulse survey that they had recorded the highest level of consumers expecting to originate new credit cards ever, like in the history, which means that consumers are starting to roll that kind of information over. We're dealing with distressed consumers, and I think you can walk into a grocery store and feel it, right? You can see it in the people around you, even if it's not impacting you directly at this point. And that's why I think that the some
yeah,
of this is going to start moving towards artificial intelligence and the opportunity to self-serve. And I don't think it's AI for AI's sake. I think it's AI for self-service sake. And that's where that
I agree.
value starts to come in, when you can perform these tasks with the least amount of resources possible. And it was you that mentioned the absence of shame in using in using these
Yeah,
tools, so the consumer doesn't feel so confrontational.
yeah, and it's think about it. They're choosing the time. It's convenient, right? It's
Hmm.
at their own convenience. So you don't have to talk to someone, a stranger, about your financial
Hmm.
issues, right? So there's no shame, there's no embarrassment, there's no like, who is this person, or that fear. Um, and I think it's a better experience. Not the what I get back and I hear in the market is, well, not everybody's going to do that. Like
Hmm.
it's AI is not here to take away every collector you have. It's to make the collectors you have way more efficient, and what you pay them to do more meaningful. Because the most worthless use of collector, U.S. collector, is an outbound phone call. It is just good luck, right?
Hmm.
And it's great when you get someone on the line and it's the right person. It's not their kid taking a message. Like, what are the odds? Like, what are you paying per right party contact?
Well, even
It's
beyond
a
just
lot.
the use cases that are directly related to the collectors themselves and that consumer
Yeah.
communication, I was recording with somebody recently and was talking about front of house and back of house, similar to like a restaurant. So, like, what is actually interacting with the consumer, and how can you start to leverage some of this technology and tool sets to support the administrative side of your business? And we saw in the report there was a 40% increase, if I remember, it was from like 11 to 18%, in terms of organizations that are actively using artificial intelligence, and then a massive jump from 2023 into 2024 of people that are exploring those opportunities. Now, the larger companies are exploring opportunities, maybe trying to build something on their own, which sounds wildly expensive and time consuming. And there was a lot of organizations that were still very focused on looking at third party tool sets and how are they going to be able to deploy it and how are they going to build their rule sets around it, which I think is also a very interesting piece. The other thing that I thought was super interesting, and this goes well in line with things that you and I have talked about recently, is that 61% of the AI adopters and 71% of companies over 100 FTE reported that their investment met or exceeded their expectations. So the money that they put into artificial intelligence in 2023 and into 2024 was meeting or exceeding their expectation in terms of ROI. I find that to be interesting. That's a pretty strong number, but it also leads me to believe that a lot of those organizations are using third-party services versus building it themselves. Because I can't imagine everybody being satisfied with build. It's like when everybody tried to build a portal or everybody tried to
Yeah.
build their own system of record. Right? It was not the best
Yeah, yeah, sure. We'll get
outcome.
it done. As soon as we get done with this, then we'll work on it, right? No, but I can see that, right? Um, I think expectations and understanding were, and I still get it in the marketplace, right? Like, is it ready? Is it ready?
Hmm.
But once you go down the road, and I just was onboarding an agency, and we were doing our UAT testing, and they were thanking us, like, hey,
Hold on,
we
but
didn't think
explain
you guys.
UAT testing. Let's go back a step for the audience that's not as familiar with some of these terms. Like let's make sure that we cover it. I also want to
So
encourage the audience to ask questions in the chat as well. I've got it up here. I can see it and I'll ask those questions as we go.
and it's interesting because onboarding a product like ours for the collection space that's out, facing your customers is, it's detailed oriented. It's not, you're talking 2 to 3 months, but it's detail oriented. And then the last part is 2 weeks of what we call internal testing, but we do it. I'm getting text messages that I owe $1.5 million. Like, it's ridiculous, but it's funny. Like,
Hmm.
our guys have, but you're getting these tests, and we're testing the links, we're testing the responses. Everybody does a different response, and their thing was like, thank you for doing this. Like, we are so much more comfortable now that we know you guys are looking at every minute detail, because we have to calibrate it to their business.
Hmm.
So it's it's a big part of what you do. Like, you're not just going to turn this. It's not a black box. You take it and turn it on and goodbye. We work with our clients and onboard, but that's a big part of, when people come up to me, like, just at a conference, and they say, how do we do this? Hey, you find a vendor, test, ask who they worked with in the industry, make sure they know what, like, things are, like, simple things like recovery percentages and unit yield. Like, make sure they understand the lingo so they understand the business, right? Like,
Hmm.
there's always those collector, we have our own jargon in this industry, right?
Sure.
Because and then once you do that, then you know that there's a skill set there. But um, adoption, like, I think that's where I see people being more excited, and then the ROI, once you get it going, is very good. It's very good because there's so many simple things. Like, I think, like, you and I've been in this space forever, right? And I did this once training salespeople, and like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we get used to, like, the jargon, and we expect
Hmm.
people to know it. I think the same thing's happening with AI. Is like, okay, yeah, we know how, you learn it and you know how it works, but you realize other people are still jumping into this thing. So their
Sure.
expectations are, "Oh, I don't know if this thing's going to work." So once you get it going and you use a proven product, man, you're going to see ROI. And we see ROI as early as 2 weeks in. We
Wow.
see ROI definitely, like it will pay for itself by month two. How many products do that?
No, it's I mean,
Like,
look, that's definitely a
yeah.
significant move, and you bring up a really good point about the language within our industry, because it's not just within our industry, it's even within individual organizations. I can't tell you how many, like when we had Comply Arm and I was out there writing policies and procedures and really digging into people's organizations, like it was like hieroglyphics sometimes when I'd walk into a new organization with all the acronyms that they had, and it was just impossible when an organization is using exclusively their own language and doesn't want to convert to another version of language. But there's a really significant challenge in that. Now, in terms of evaluating AI for the purpose of a debt collector, some of the things that I wanted to make sure that we talked about today was really trying to understand the use cases themselves, right? What are the use cases of artificial intelligence within the debt collection space? Because there's written communication, there's scoring, there's a lot of different things that we can do with it. We've identified six that I think are a strong baseline, but there's always something else. There's always an AI use case in your human resources. There's an AI use case in your accounting department. There's an AI
Financial, yeah.
use case in your even in reception, right? Like even on inbound calling, I'm not really. I'm running a different kind of organization these days than a debt collection company. I still have an AI receptionist that answers the main line. So there's a lot of different use cases for you to start looking around at your business and saying, how can I improve this? Sales, marketing, right? There's all those use cases as well. But we've identified six that I think are really strong within the debt collection space specifically. And I'll add a link to the YouTube presentation that I had done with Chris Beliat's with Latitude, talking through those kind of six use cases. Now, you've had experience working in a lot of different, or touching a lot of different AI related products. Any insights on maybe some of the hidden corners that our audience should look at for value from artificial intelligence?
Yeah, like I think there's a couple. Like the one that come most to mind is like when I started in '96. Man, I'm old. How many back office people were in a large agency? Two or three handling administrative stuff. When I left, I think there was 16 or 23. I can't remember, but like that's a huge jump. 23 people that are not making phone calls, not producing, but there are costs, but necessary costs, right? Like so, QA is a great use case. AI is now at the level where it understands sentiment, it understands emotion. It can tell you that it can grade in like intervals. Hey, the call came in mad, and it ended happy, right? Like it is an amazing. So you can QA 100% of your accounts. Now, is the QA to the point it's 100% accurate? No, it's probably like 90%. It will give you a confidence score, and then your people only have to do 10%. And then how great is it to tell a client, hey, we 100% QA monitor? Um, I think that's, I mean, clients are going to, that's an advantage. So then I thought about too is your digital. It is so much more effective to have personalized messaging based, let the customer make the treatment strategy. That's the change where AI allows you to do, right? Mike Walsh has a different treatment than Adam Parks. And AI will learn that. It will, depending, and it can be medical, it can be utility, it can be whatever debt, credit card. But there's certain ways people do things, and you want to make it, again, it's marketing, right? You're selling a customer, put this bill on top of the rest, right? So if you make it convenient and personalized and ease of use, who are you going to, what debt are you going to pay? And then you resell back to the client that, hey, They loved the experience. We measured it. They gave us this Google rating. So that client can now open up business again with them, even though they went through a tough time. So there's, and I think the space is realizing that, right? Like
Mhm.
client service has become such a big part of, or customer service, big part of debt collections. It is customer service. It's just the hardest part, right? Like it's
Yeah, this
one of the
100%
hardest,
right. It is the
yeah,
hardest part of that
customer
process.
service. Yeah.
But I did find, I just dropped the link for that YouTube webinar that I did on the 6 use cases, but I wanted to just shout these out real quick because I think it ties very well into our conversation today. But the use cases that we identified here was scoring and treatment,
Yep.
data sourcing and appending. So adding new, or identifying and adding new data to your existing data sets, right? So
Oh, yeah.
appending your data, chat and written communication, voice communication that we've been talking about, quality and compliance, and then negotiation, which I think is also an interesting one. And a lot of the tools that I've reviewed recently did not have true negotiation capabilities. It was still very much like the old school portals. And so I think that's an area where we're going to see
Yeah,
significant
that
advancement.
is you should have negotiation built into your portal at this point. Like to me, when Mike Walsh or Adam Parks goes to your website,
Mhm.
if they have to build a plan from scratch, you're going to get a $25 offer, right? Like then you're going to get a $27 offer, then a 38, and then they're going to leave,
Mhm.
right? Like if it doesn't mean, but if you have a thing that says here's 6 payments of $42, and then you have another offer of 5 payments of $52. Like if you map it out and they can click, and it's based on their situation, and it's asking them questions to if they can't find the plan,
Mhm.
it's just such a better experience. Like Amazon's not going to let you, what would you rather do? eBay, a phone case, or Amazon? I'm just going to Amazon and buying it. I'm not going
Yeah,
to deal with the
100%.
offer. like,
Versus picking up the
like
phone? Are you serious?
$7. Yeah, yeah. Right. Like, so that's kind of the customer expectation is, okay, what do I pay? How do I do this? Right.
Mhm.
Um, so I think portals are hugely important. It's probably the third biggest use case. Like engaging the customer, driving to the portal. Portal's got to be sharp. It's got to be intelligent. It's got to be personalized.
What's the
I
point
think.
of sending text messages and emails if you're not going to push them to a frictionless portal? What's the point?
Good point.
How
And
how are
ask
you supposed to
yourself,
convert those? Like
right?
you could
Like,
have great open rates, you could even have great engagement rates, but if they're going to a place, or like if they're going to a tool set that's not going to provide them with the opportunity they're looking for, or the negotiation or the information, then you're losing that massive opportunity and you're just throwing money into the marketplace in terms of these communications. From the TU report on the AI questions, and in the 2025 report, we're changing the questions to actually focus on the 6 use cases that we were just talking about.
that makes sense.
But in this case, it's 57% of AI is being used for segmentation and payment prediction. So how should I treat which accounts? I get that. And 56% for virtual negotiation, but I question the real understanding of the respondents when it comes to what is truly a virtual negotiation driven by artificial intelligence versus just driven by if and then statements.
Correct. That's the definition, right? Like,
If and then is
is
not
that
artificial intelligence, let's be clear.
yeah, right. Yeah, I think it's getting there though. Like, I think more payment providers are providing some sort of negotiation. Um,
If I told you the percentage of debt collection companies out there that are not using a portal but are just using a flat payment page, it would shock you.
I run into it. I even run into it creditors too, and we're like,
Mhm.
we look at each other and say, we can help you with this, right? Like, we need
I've
to,
I've
we
got
need
a
to get
solution
this
for
fixed
that.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it sounds like the big pushback in the marketplace when you talk to somebody about artificial intelligence and what their challenges are, the first thing that comes up is always the compliance and legal. And there was, statements from the CFPB that came out and said, here are expectations, and a lot of it was about not having black box and how the consumer is being treated.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that we've talked about in the latest episode of the AI Hub podcast, I talk about a little bit the privacy impact assessments. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about what that is, what it means, and why it's a mission critical evaluation before providing data to any third party to train the model?
So,
There's a lot of
right.
questions at
And in
once.
the first, right, the first, that is a natural reaction, and it should be, right?
Hmm.
Compliance. Like, I want a product that's not going to get me sued. So, privacy is huge. Like, what you should be using this data for is only for the collection of the accounts you're sending them, right?
Hmm.
It should not be used. So let's just say, and I've had people come from other vendors and they said, hey, how many phone calls, tapes do you need? And I said, what are you talking about? Right? Like, I don't need to hear any of your phone calls. They don't have anything to do with me from clients that are not mine. No, our
Hmm.
model's trained, right? Like, I think that's number one privacy is if Mike Walsh has a medical collection account with your agency and someone wants to use that account to train their model, ooh, I would not send it to them.
Hmm.
First of all, you can go on ChatGPT and create, you know, give me a script for a collection model. Like you could do that. Me and you were talking about how you did that a few times, you know. So just create dummy data and train your models, right? Like, do not give true collect, right? Then you have all the state laws are coming out there. So CFPB number one thing to look out for, I think there is no one wants a death loop. So if I say
Hmm.
human being, you better send me to a human being. If I text call, someone better call me. Um, so that if you're looking at a solution, make sure that's there. I would also look at what means what, right? There's what we call
Back to the
utterances.
language.
Yes, right? Go jump in a lake. Does that mean cease and desist? Or does it just mean stop calling me? Like, you have to define these things. It has to be
That's a
detailed.
good point.
So, yeah, right. Like, so S means stop for us,
Hmm.
even though it's just S, right? Even if they fat finger it, we're going to say, okay, we'll stop. Boom, gone. Like, you have to go through those compliance rules. Now, once you set up the guidelines and the groundwork, the
Hmm.
beauty of AI is it will never break any compliance rule you give it. It will not.
It
It
is
is
good at following
programmed not.
rules as long as the
Yes,
rules are clearly defined.
correct. You just got to make sure. So that's where I think experience in the space, model governance too. Like model governance, meaning you talked about, and I don't know if you want to jump in here, but
Let's do it.
it's part of compliance, right? Because if you're using, and I talked to someone who is building something, and they said, "Oh, we have all the zip code," and I'm like, "Ooh, I would
Mm.
not use that. I would take that out immediately."
Yeah, I
And
feel like that falls right down the path of redlining, right? Like I don't.
right,
That's a little bit more HUD, but still.
right, you can. You also have to, it's got to be equitable to everybody, right?
Hmm.
Like you can't use data that can be used to make decisions that it shouldn't make, right? Like AI
Hmm.
smart, it can figure out, hey, and it can figure out things that you don't want it to figure out, right? Like so, we strip the information you should be providing to a third party product like mine. Like it should be very basic. It should be, I always say it's a dialer file with an email address. That's all it is. I don't need gender. I don't need birth date. I don't need anything that could be used to make assumptions about people. We
Hmm.
don't want. If you're using birth date to like verify that it's Mike Walsh calling in or texting in, okay, but that will
But
not
it's
be
got to
fed
stay out
into
of
the
the
model. Yeah,
calculations,
that's a
right? Like
different
it's a
model, right? Yeah,
verification
correct.
point and calculations are two different things. Yes, Dave
Mhm.
Sargent, I can make a copy of the presentation available. Um, one of the things that I think is really interesting here is when we talk about data security, it was the number one concern of the debt collection companies in the 2024 survey. So 62% of companies said that they had, or 62% of companies with 100 plus FTE said that they were highly concerned about data security. Like that was their number one concern. And it outranked previously, it had been compliance and costs, right? Like controlling costs and compliance risk have been at the top for a number of years. I want to say going all the way back to 2020 when the survey first started. That's been a consistent one. This is the first year. And I think part of that is the AI risks that are being introduced into the marketplace, and that there's just more risk that's happening from an AI perspective, and it's the unknown. The thing we fear the most is the unknown. In anything in life, like let's take the business out of it for a minute. The biggest fear that you can have in life is a fear of the unknown, like not
Oh,
knowing
I
what's
hate
going to
it.
happen next. And that's right. And that's what drives us crazy and keeps us
Yeah.
up at night or wakes us up early in the morning. Now, when it comes to data security, I think it's part of the fear of the unknown because people are not as comfortable or understanding of artificial intelligence in general. I think the second part of that is just all the high profile data security incidents that have happened in the last couple of years where some really good organizations just aren't here anymore. Right? There's a huge cost
Yeah.
associated with it. It is a Death Star type event. It could be anyway if you don't have the proper insurance and whatnot. But talk to me a little bit about like where's the data, right? What's the application stack look like, and how many parties deep is it being shared across third-party LLMs?
I would say, yeah, that's there's a lot to unpack there. First is,
I know there
where's
was
the
a lot for
data?
a short period.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the multiple faceted question. Let's start with where's the data?
Hmm.
So we're a global company. Wherever we work, there's a AWS data center that we're using, right? So only people in EXL USA can touch PPI in the USA. Only people in Australia can touch, right? No cross border um, transfer of data. And every country has that, US, Canada, everywhere. So I would always say, how many developers do you have in the United States?
Hmm.
Um, because if there's a problem with the data, somebody in the US has to look at it, right? Like if all their developers are in Colombia, then how is someone in the US going to look at the problem when it breaks, right?
Hmm.
Good thing about AWS is it doesn't really break.
Yeah,
It's
fair.
backed up. But something breaks and you have to go into an account. Like
Hmm.
there's got to be someone in the U.S. to look at that. So that's always a good first question, right? Like, okay, where's the data housed? Do I get my own instance or is it shared? That's also a question, right? I don't want to accidentally send
Commingled
Adam
data
Park's
sounds like
account.
a
Yeah.
bad idea. It sounds like a Samsung style
Now people
mistake.
will segment it out, right? But it's on one AWS instance.
Hmm.
We don't do that. We give everybody their own instance just because
Would even be
it's
easier to
another risk,
transfer
right?
it.
Like and people are right to be worried about this, right? Because
Hmm.
I can tell you part of EXL, what we do is data security. And
Hmm.
now with AI scammers attacking hosts, the level of security has gotten really cool and really amazing. Like
Yeah.
some of we use two firewalls on our AWS, and one is from AWS, one is outside vendor because we double back it.
Because you stack them. We do the same thing defending
Correct.
websites, right? We've got an external like Cloudflare, and then internal there's another fire, like there's a WAP firewall that's
Right.
on
I
the
can't
site
get an email.
itself. Yeah, look,
My
we're
email
defending
gets locked
WordPress
in that.
sites. You've got actual consumer information, right? Like
Right.
I'm defending the marketing presence, and we have to go through that kind of a level. And I did an AI Hub episode recently with Tim Collins from Indebted, where we started talking about like what is it going to mean when the AI starts generating the attacks? Because if you thought
Oh, they already
DDoS,
are.
denial of service attacks, were a problem 5 years ago, I mean, I dealt with a lot of them 5 years ago, right prior to Cloudflare. Now what? What's going to happen when the artificial intelligence starts
You're
getting
using
more
yeah,
complex?
you're using AI to defend itself against AI.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
already happening.
weird. It's
Yeah.
like Rock'em Sock'em Robots or something. Like I feel like I'm just kind of going back and forth.
Correct. That's exactly what's happening, and um, that's why that's why everybody's worried, right?
Mhm.
I would say, agencies should be never satisfied with their data security. I think that's something where we have like four people or five people in IT, depending on how big we are, maybe two people, and they say, "Oh, we got this. It's the best. We're using that."
Mhm.
I would constantly be looking at, okay, what's new in the market? What's better than that? What's rated highest? Because it's important, right? Um, And I think this is a huge question. It's expensive. The best products are, like everybody calls me, hey, what kind of data, insurance? Where do you guys get it? Where do you guys? I'm like, we're a global company, dude. We're getting it from some really big players, and
Yeah.
it
It all
costs a
comes down
lot
to
of money.
two.
Yeah, right, right. But in the arm space, it's hard, right? And
Yeah.
people are making it harder, and it drives me crazy because it's a necessary space, right? Like without us, what would I mean? Right now, what would be credit card rate? It would be absurd, you know.
But look, that's why I think ACA partnered up with QBE to start creating
Thank God they did.
policies
Yeah,
and educating underwriters and going through that process. And I unfortunately couldn't make it because we just had the baby. But they did the cybersecurity forum for the first time with ACA in Austin at the end of March, and that looked. I mean, from all the feedback I heard, it was absolutely incredible.
yeah,
And
and I
we
think that's necessary, right? Like this is the
yeah.
world we live in. So how your data is transferred, how your data is stored, where is it stored, what is your security levels? I think you start with compliance, then you go right to data security when
Yeah.
you're bringing on a vendor.
So
And
I got another question for you here that just popped up
yeah,
in the chat. It was asking about, what about bad actors trying to use a service like yours? Is there a defense mechanism on your side? Is there, what does that look like if there's a bad actor trying to use that type of technology?
yeah, I mean, we don't. So
I mean, you pretty much know
everyone
everybody that
say-
you're doing business with, but
yeah,
so
right,
let
like
me ask the question a little bit more generically and not be just so focused on EXL because I realize how deeply integrated you are as an individual. But what kind of protections are there, or are there protections against let's say rogue agencies or banned debt collectors trying to leverage this type of technology?
it's a tough one, but I will tell you, we personally we look at your history. We use AI to scour for legal incidents before we bring on a client. We have a compliance department that looks at our clients. It's a responsible AI policy, and it brings up a good point, right? Like that's one of the first things you should ask from an AI vendor. What is your responsible AI policy? Look, we're I'm lucky. Like I've worked for some good companies, and we're an established player globally. We're traded on Nasdaq. We have a lot of SOC 2. We go through a lot, and we're not gonna jeopardize anything for a bad actor.
And you see the
Um,
compliance reports too. So if there's a whole series of complaints and screaming consumers and things, I would
correct.
think that your systems are going to bubble those to the top to identify that, like,
Yes.
hey, we got a problem
And I
with this
don't even,
particular client.
because I'm in sales, I don't even get to see them. They
Yeah,
just
I
say,
mean,
nope.
not to you, but it's going to
Yeah. Right,
your
right, right, right.
group.
But there are some tools out there where you can do those. I'm thinking Lexus. Like you can do those searches. If someone has a ton of, like I saw one time a debt buyer that was being sued by other debt buyers.
Hmm.
That's not a good
Usually a
sign to
reason
me.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, and it was not one where they got in an argument over a deal and whatever. It was multiple, and it
Yeah.
was a list. And I'm like, we're not working with them, right?
Hmm.
So you. That's a great thing about
Self-preservation through
research.
avoidance of problems. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing about research is you can see how these people have behaved in the past, and the greatest indicator is future actions is the past.
Hmm.
And then um, we have a really old school industry where people share information, they talk face to face, and I had people say careful, and I'm like, oh, why? They wouldn't tell me, but
I
you
saw a
do this.
quote the other day that I think is wildly apparent here, and it's basically that, like, at the bottom, right, at the bottom of organizations or at the bottom of industries, people compete. At the top, they collaborate, and that's what I think
I
the
agree.
debt collection industry has become. It's become a collaboration of individuals across, right? Like if I saw you about to do business with somebody that I wouldn't do business with, I would say, hey, you might want to take a look at X, Y, or Z, right? Like just
And
you
it
make
brings
your
up
own
another
decision.
point.
It's never telling anybody what to do. It's
Yeah,
only providing people with the information or putting them
a
on
heads
the
up.
trail of their own research.
Yep. And the tool too, right, protects the consumer, number
Hmm.
one. So even if you, let's say you were new, you slipped through, you didn't have the long history, you just started, and that was always the worry when I was selling an agency is who are these guys we're competing against? What are they doing,
Hmm.
right? Well, if the tool doesn't allow you to break any rules, because there are compliance engines that govern, so it's not the Wild West where we just say it will do this, whatever you like. It's governed, right? Like Dan Yakomenko, my cohort, our product manager, he's on the RMAI compliance board.
Hmm.
That's built in. So it's a good question to ask too. What kind of compliance, collection compliance is built into this tool? You don't want to buy a marketing tool that's brought over and
too
thrown out there.
too many products or organizations build something in another marketplace, a customer service marketplace. I was talking with a group yesterday that was building in like debt settlement space, for example, and like that's all well and good, but the rule set is not the same. So if you really have to
Correct.
look at what's the track record of an individual vendor, and then moving into the model governance, because we covered a little bit of this on the last slide, but one of the things I think it's important to point out here is, are you looking at like fourth parties? So if I'm going to
Yes.
use you, right, as a vendor, I got to look at you. But if your model was was stacked up on another model, I need to concern myself with that other organization as well.
And how they
Because,
keep your data. Like, are
well,
they
and what are they
taking
going to
that?
do with it?
Yeah. Are they selling it to someone to sell people,
Well, I mean,
loans,
think of
right? Like,
let's even go back and look at.
they're
I'll use
part.
ChatGPT as an example, just because I feel like the audience is somewhat familiar with
Yeah.
ChatGPT. Sam, we've all heard the story of Samsung loading in a whole bunch of proprietary information that just became part of the model. And so, like, I always go back to trying to remember that it's the same reason I pay for Gmail for my family, right? Like, I pay for the Google suite for my family, because if you're not paying for the product, you are the product,
It's a good point.
right?
Right. You
So
get
if
what you pay
if
for.
if I did all my personal family, business through a Gmail, like at gmail.com, that information technically all belongs to Google. Like, they can read it, they can use it to serve me ads, they can use it to serve me ads all
And
the
they
way
do.
across the internet in 1,000 different places, especially if I'm using their Chrome browser. So like that's something that we need to really consider here, right? If there's
I
some
think,
challenges to address.
yeah, when you're buying a tool, right? Like, and let's say it's easier in the customer facing than like even the models though in the back office are important. But
Hmm.
okay, let's say the customer facing. Okay, who's sending the text? Who's sending the email? How is it being sent?
Hmm.
Who's getting that data and how is it being used? What is their model governance? Now you have to go into their models. Like model governance, like I can give you our model governance, right? It basically describes what's being used in the model and how the data is being used and it's not being resold and um, all these important compliance data security elements are in that.
Hmm.
When it goes out to fourth party, now you need to get a model governance for every other vendor there
Hmm.
that's there. Because you don't know, right? Like that Chat GPT is a great example.
Hmm.
And it's probably the best example that, hey, I meant to do this, but all my stuff was taken and used because they were allowed to, right? Like they agreed to use it, the same user agreement. So um, it's a very and it can be totally tight and secure. You just have to look at it, right? Like I'm not saying that we're
Not
the
saying there's no good
the only way
companies
to
out
do it is
there. It's just,
self-contained, self-owned.
yeah.
You can um, you can do it the other way too. You just have to make sure all those elements are tight and secure. And
I think you make
being
good points about what you need to look for, right? It's
yeah,
not this. It's not to say that this is good and this is bad. I think what we're trying to point out here is the that you
there's
need to
steps.
look at these particular things to understand, because you don't want to go blind buying AI technology. You don't want to find yourself, and I'm going to call it the deep seek rabbit hole, in realizing that there is no security layer, there is no model governance, and that the whole thing is just open to anybody.
Taking all your data.
Right, it's just
Right.
consuming information. And you look at companies like OpenAI that are pretty strict around. I know in order to get some of my sites on OpenAI, I had to actually activate the domain. I had to go in and change DNS settings to show that this domain is okay with you reading what's on this site. Like that's a step in the right direction. DeepSeek being a very different situation where it's just going to do whatever it wants to do whenever it wants to do it. And what does that mean? For a highly regulated industry, that seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, and that's a good like back office. What you mentioned sales earlier, and I was like,
Hmm.
huh, how do you think sales? But in sales, I would make sure if you're going to use a product,
Hmm.
to help write email, concise, to do research, you pay for that product. Do not use a free product, right? Like,
If you
and you
don't pay for
understand
the
what you're
product, you are the product.
correct, right? You are market research and you're training a model. That's basically what you do.
Look, you don't pay for Facebook, you're the product. You don't pay for Instagram, you're the
Right.
product. You don't pay for LinkedIn, you're the product.
Correct. You are, right? Like, and it's weird. But this is not an industry where you are the product, right? Like, you don't want to be the product.
I definitely do not want to be the product. That's why I don't mind paying for some of these tool sets. And then evaluating it and talking about some of the biases that can be found within these tool sets as well. I've got one quick little story I wanted to throw in here to kind of to illustrate something that I've experienced recently that you could probably replicate yourself in ChatGPT fairly easily. So I was since we've had the baby, I find myself talking to ChatGPT every once in a while when I'm stuck in a chair and she's sleeping, right? And so I'll be sitting there and I'm having this conversation with the ChatGPT bot because I spend the $200 a month or whatever for the best model that I can get my hands on. So I'm sitting there and I have this whole conversation about trying to create personas for the consumers in debt collection. So, what are the categories of consumers that I can identify and how I should, what are their motivations and how can I engage with these people? And it started off at like 15 different categories, and eventually we pared it down to 8 categories. And I said, all right, but 8 categories is a lot to remember, especially on stage. Like, let me see if I can personify these a little bit better. So what I did to personify them was I actually gave them all names, right? Organized Olivia, combative Chris on the other side, and so like each one of them has like its own persona. So I go through that whole thing. I sent it out to a good friend of ours and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" He said, "This is awesome. Like, this is a really good breakdown. Like, we should put this out into the industry and see what kind of feedback people have on it. I'm actually going to publish it next week."
Yeah, I'm excited to see it.
So then I
And
went
you're not
back
prepared for
and then I
it.
went back. Well, hold on. So then I go back to ChatGPT and I said, okay, let's create a character for each one of these. Like let's lean into this a little bit. And this is something that Branding Arc as a marketing company can really start to use to talk to people about how they're engaging with these different types of consumers. I feel like it's a good exercise from a behavioral standpoint. And man, the results were
Ooh.
racist, like wildly racist. It was there was no even balance to it, to a point where the same friend who was like, this is a really good idea to break out the personas, was like, you can't publish that.
Right.
You can't take these characters and publish them without it coming back on you as being wildly biased. And as we've talked about in some of the AI Hub episodes, you're responsible for everything your model outputs. So whatever's going to come out of your model, like whatever, if I go in and I review a legal brief or whatever, or an email, whatever it is, I'm still responsible for it. There's no like, oh, ChatGPT did it, right? Like
Right. They
it's
don't,
never the
nobody cares. You
responsible
publish
party.
it. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
user, look, it's same
Yeah.
thing with a hammer. If I build a house, that's one thing. If I smash a car window, that's another thing. Same hammer, right? And how I behave with it is still my responsibility. AI is just a tool for us to use. And one of my really good friends reminded me recently that ChatGPT is a drunk frat boy. And that's the best way that I always have to look at it, as a drunk frat boy, because it could be wildly wrong in one of its assumptions, but it's going to say it with all of the confidence in the world.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
It blew
It's
my
like a
mind when I
poker.
heard that.
Yeah.
And it's really
It's a
changed my
poker one.
entire perspective of what this tool set actually does.
Right. And that's where you have to get into like that's model governance too. What are the biases in here, right? Like
Hmm.
especially debt collections, right? Um, there's areas of the country that are going to collect better. What is there was a article years ago, wherever there's a casino, there's
Hmm.
a higher bankruptcy rate, right? Like that's just
Hmm.
information. So should you put that in your model? No, you should not. Right? Like that is
No, because when you
not
start
doing.
using zip codes, other things come to mind. And you and I have talked about how we used to sell accounts on a zip code basis at Credit
Correct.
Max. Like that was part of their debt sales system, like one of the
That was
first
my
digital
number one
brokerage
report.
platforms.
Yeah, when we were like analyzing whether we'd work with like a debt buyer or account, we'd look at a zip code report, right? Like, and it's like,
Hmm.
oh no, we don't need this. Like, that's biased, right? Like, we
It's
didn't think of
it's
it that way, but
wildly
it is,
biased.
right? Like, it is completely biased, right? Like,
Mm.
so now with AI, you do not want to be doing that because then it comes into fair lending. Are you offering different settlements to different people because of zip code, because of things like that, gender, race, etc. Age is a big one, right? Like
Mm.
you don't think of age discrimination,
Still a
but
protected class.
yeah, and guess what? It definitely happens. Like my daughter gets treated differently at a restaurant than I do.
Hmm.
She's in college and I'm old man, right? Like there's no way. Like people ask her, she's the hostess, and they ask me, you know, what do you want to drink? Like, like like
Yeah.
what do what do you need, sir? Like it's different, and it's um, so when using AI, just make sure all that's stripped out. Make sure it's all gone, and make sure again, if it's using other people's components, those also have it stripped out.
Hmm.
Um, we built our own. We're in control of everything, so nothing can break that's not ours, right? Like right.
You
So
control the entire stack. And that's
the entire
a very
yeah,
different animal, right? Like when you control the entire stack versus building on top of building on top of building is two very different animals. Now, as we kind of come down into, we're probably going to go a little bit over because we started a little bit late due to my technical
yeah. Whatever, it happens.
expertise on LinkedIn Live here.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you brought up this language, I had actually never heard it before. We were having a discussion planning here, and it was agentic AI. And I know everybody talks about generative AI, but could you talk to me a little bit about kind of the two different worlds that we see in the marketplace right now? One, I'm going to call it templated, right? Templated
Yeah.
being if and then statements, right? Very defined flows, and the other being agentic AI. Talk to us a little bit about what that actually means.
I'll try to use an example, and it's not 100% true, but it's kind of the gist of it, right? Like templated AI is where the AI is understanding what Adam Parks says and saying, I've seen this before on this type of account, and I
Mm-hmm.
know the next best action is to say this back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes it's the only thing I can say back because it's that templated. And it's what's great about templated AI in the space, and that's what our current two-way SMS and virtual agents are doing is it's everything can be reviewed. Everything is set up. Everything is now it's a big review,
Sure.
but worth it, right? Like you're 100% sure everything's going to happen the way it is predicted, and it's we've even walked clients through the open up the back and showed them kind of how it maps and give them examples. What if I say this? What if I say that? Right? Everything is mapped out. Agentic AI, generative AI, and you hear generative more, and now you will hear agentic stripped down to agent AI. Um, and there's other terms for it too, right? Like, but basically, it's where the AI is making decisions based on the customer input.
Mm-hmm.
It is not as predictable. So we use this. We use this right now.
Mm-hmm.
We use it with in the customer service space, and we are loading it. We're beta testing it in the collection space.
Okay.
So if you build this, you have to have compliance agents also built to check each one of those agents in each part of a call, right? Like,
You're
so
reminding me of casino, and the eye in the sky is watching us all.
correct. But agent, the thing about it making decisions is if I say this, will it say this? Probably, right? Like not 100%, right? Like,
Some version of
so
that.
yes. Now, what is the advantage of agentic AI is, man, it sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Man, people are more comfortable. It will speed up. Like I'm from New Jersey originally. I talk pretty fast. If my sister talks way faster than me, right?
Hmm.
It will keep up with her. It will talk at her speed. I've been living in the South for years. I've slowed down. I went to college, it will slow down to me, but I have neighbors, they'll talk slow and
Hmm.
it will slow down to their speed. Or if English is your second language, it will understand your accent and it can even understand the slang and slow down and make it more understandable for you. So it can do a lot more, but it's less predictable. Um,
That's really interesting
so
when you talk about the tone and frequency of voice and how that works. I
tone is
mean, we
amazing.
did a project in the early 2000s, say around 2004, 2006, somewhere in that time period, where we were actually taking the, let's say the southern accounts, and we were making sure that those went to agents that had a slower southern drawl, and then we sent the, New York fast talking accounts up to New York, and we actually did see a pretty significant increase in what we were able to do there, because when you put the New Yorkers on the phone with the Texans, it did not go well, right? Like
But
the
even think about
communication
this,
style is
like,
just different.
look, I went to the University of Oklahoma and then Florida, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I knew Okies who talk faster than me, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we summarize it because like the
Well,
draw,
because that's
whatever.
the only thing that we had to do in 2006. Now we
Right,
can
right, right.
measure it
We
in
made
real
generalities,
time and
we made
adjust.
groupings, yeah, and used
Yeah.
it. But this is like individualized, so it's
Mm-hmm.
like every person in Texas, it's going to talk at their speed. No
Mm-hmm.
matter, every person in New York, it's going to talk at their speed. My mom talks slow, right? She's in Jersey still. She will never leave. Right? Like, she talks slow, drives me crazy. But the AI will work at that speed. Like, there's so many cool things in like the up and downs of tones, like we just had right there. Like, now I listen for it is human. It mimics those. It's when it says it's sorry, it drags out sorry. The empathy that you program in, the tone is much greater. Like, it's much more human. So it is amazing what it's capable of, but the programming is massive.
Yeah.
Um, the compliance programming is massive. But you know, when they started talking to me about this last year, I was like, okay, great. When is it? Like 2027? What are we talking here? They're like June. Like, no,
June.
really.
No, seriously. Like,
And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And they're like, no, June. And I was like, really? So, and I've heard like we have samples of it, and it's amazing.
mhm.
So that's where it's going. And I would also look at your AI vendors, let's say, because that's what they are,
Mhm.
you know, or partners, however you want to talk about. But you're gonna pay someone money to produce ROI for you.
Mhm.
Where are they going? What are their next steps? Where are they taking you? Because on the customer service side, for a large, you would know their name. I can't say their name because we built it in their system for them, and then we are copying it out to our system. It's reducing like customer service 50 to 60%
Wow.
of agent.
And
And,
and what
and
a
this
hard
is right
position to
now.
hire for right now. Like that's a
Correct.
we're
Right. The
struggling to get
savings.
people into the offices to get, it used to be 10 people in a class, you'd have 5 collectors at the end of the month. Now you're lucky if you got
Doesn't call in
one from
sick.
a class of
Right.
10.
Yeah. Doesn't call in sick. Works 365. Call
Mhm.
it Christmas evening at 10 p.m. It's going to answer. Um, and if the customer creates that, you can work it. Like, it will respond, right? Like, because it's customer initiated. So now your agency works 24/7, 365. Right there, you're making ROI. I don't care who you are. You're making ROI just on that. Because a truck driver who's driving, like, even I work a lot. I'm a maniac, and then I spend time with my family. I'll go, watch a game, and then I might say, oh, I gotta pay this, like, you
Mhm.
know. And like, I had to rush, go to the hospital with my son for allergic reaction. And I was like, how do I owe this much? Like, it's not that, but I'm like,
I'm
how does
going
this
through that
cost?
right now from the birth of the
So I
baby.
called and no one's there. It's like, great. Now I got to do this tomorrow when I'm working, right? Like,
Yeah.
so
Hey, at least they
I would,
finally got automation for asking for an itemized statement. Like that's a big
yeah,
improvement.
right.
I was happy that the IVR worked.
That's cool. But I think that's where we're going. Like, and those, hey, can I just get a copy of my bill?
Mhm.
boom, it will send it to you, right? Like you're getting that.
So I've got one more question for you as we're kind of coming to our final moments here. But one of the things that we've talked a lot about what it means for me as a debt collection company to investigate using artificial intelligence. Well, let's go one degree of separation here. I'm a debt buyer, and my agency is asking me to approve the use of artificial intelligence as a tool set. And maybe it's a particular. Let's assume it's a particular vendor. Same process, right? Like as the debt
I
buyer,
mean,
like
yeah,
I need to be asking those questions of the vendor because if I'm required to treat my vendors the way I treat myself internally, then I need to do all of these same things for each one of those vendors that I'm approving to leverage this type of technology on the accounts that I own.
it's a two-part question too, because right, that agency had to get permission to share everything with either the creditor who's
Hmm.
on that getting accounts from or the debt buyer. Either one,
Hmm.
same
Sure.
thing.
Yeah. Same thing.
And I think debt buyers and creditors, same thing here is they should they should ask the question. Oh, you're using someone? Great. And you see it more and more RFPs. Everybody gets an RFP. They call me, Walsh, how do I answer this? I'm like, well, sign up and then I'll give you the answer. But anyway,
I'll give you the cheat
but
sheet. It's
it's
fine.
true. Yeah, no problem. But yeah, you should be asking your vendors that question. They should have that information for you. They should have a file on that, like any of those because everybody has a vendor requirements, right? Like
Hmm.
of every debt buyer, every creditor. You should send that to them. And I think for salespeople of collection agencies or even debt buyers, it's a huge advantage, right? Knowing you have a AI arm that's going to deliver on every account because
Hmm.
it doesn't score accounts unless there's no contact information, right? Like, but pretty much every workable account's going to get worked and
Hmm.
going to get a good treatment. That's a lot more confidence for your salespeople out there. Creditors are doing it. Most of our clients so far have been creditors, so but agencies right now are flooding us. Like so, I think the wave is coming. It's a natural progression. But if you're a debt buyer, even if you're passive, ask the questions because I think to
Especially if you're
be
passive, because it's even more if all of this is going to be happening at the agency, you got to understand what's happening at the agency. Just like you audit for
correct.
everything else, this is no different.
Yep.
And those
And there's audit
the
tools. That's
privacy
another
impact
thing too, right?
statement.
Yeah, and I would also look in at AI audit tools if I'm a passive debt buyer, right? Like,
Hmm.
why not just be sure of what's happening? And I think there's so many use cases. Like, I'm excited for the 8 you guys talked about because whatever's manual and a pain can be
Hmm.
solved with AI 90% of the time. There's like a couple things I've run into that are like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, and they were so obscure. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And it
Yeah.
was for this little part of a bank. I was like, no, it's not big enough. But anything that is a shared issue with debt buyers or creditors or collection agencies can be solved through AI. If it's shared, there's a marketplace. If there's a marketplace, there's a solution. Um, and we're building one for collections right now, and
Mm.
like it's just exciting what's happening, and people it's happening faster than you think. The whole process, people are adopting it faster than you think. People are looking at it, and I think that TransUnion report was kind of like when you told me about it first. We were both like, "Whoa, that's bigger than we thought," right? Like
As soon as I saw the numbers, you were the first person I called on the AI side, and I said,
you're
"Dude,
like,
you're not
"Is
gonna
this true?"
believe what I'm seeing here in terms of 40% increase in adoption in a year is wild." But I was one of those people too, right? 2023, I wasn't gonna touch it. Deep into 2024, I even put out a memo to my team saying this is not to be used. 2025, I've got 350% increase of my visibility. So as much as I want to push back and be like, hey, this isn't the future, I do really believe that this is going to drive a lot of what our future looks like. And if my predictions are right on the linear regression analysis and predicting the charge off volumes into the future, we're going to need something. We're going to need help
Yeah.
because there are not enough people. We don't have enough seats. And this is bigger and badder than it ever has been before. So I think we need to get out in front of these things and do everything that we can to start preparing our self-service technology, or start making your BPO, arrangements, and start getting ready to travel across the world and go through that cycle. And you may need to do all three at the same time. Focus on that hiring, look at those BPO services, and start applying self-service
Right.
technology simultaneously, because the growth curve is there and the originations are higher, and these consumers are going to be more distressed. So there's going to be multiple accounts for each one of them. If we're looking at the high, like I said, the highest volume of new credit card origination ever recorded is expected in
And
2025.
we look at that. Like we look at credit card, I look at medical, right? Like those are the two that I've always used, and then housing, right? Like those are the three I've always used. But someone sent me an article the other day. I don't know. I meant to bring this up before we got on. 50% of the people who attended Coachella financed it.
Oh my God.
That's, yeah, like that's what's happening.
Well,
Um,
don't get me into the buy now, pay
Coachella
later
is a
stuff
movie,
and the
like,
blind spot. Don't
like,
don't get me started. That's
right? There's,
that's another conversation for another day, Mike. I
all right.
really I'm gonna wrap up today. I really do appreciate you coming on and having these chats with me. I realize that you live on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, and I appreciate you regularly sharing your updates with me and just helping to keep me informed on some of the things so that I can speak about them intelligently and I can continue to try and create great content for a great industry, Mike. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your insights today. I really
Thank
do
you.
appreciate you.
Anybody out there who watches this has a question, feel free to reach out. Happy to answer it. And this was fun, man. Anytime. This is always a blast.
Well,
And
we're going to be doing more of this, so you hang
yeah,
tight for just a minute while I end the feed. But thank you, everybody, very much for your time and attention today. We really do appreciate you coming on and spending your lunchtime with us. But for all of you out there, again, thank you, and we'll see y'all again soon. Bye, everybody.